Wilson cried out, "Mum, where were you all this while? You have no right to judge me, it's all your fault." Amara couldn't hold herself as Wilson walked out on her. "What have I done? What have I done to my son?" Amara cried as she asked herself, "What should I do now? How did it all started?" Hang on tight, friends, let's dive into the story in detail. Amara was no stranger to hardship. As a single mother in a modest African village, she had learned to juggle multiple responsibilities to provide for her only son, Wilson. Her days were filled with work, chores, and an unwavering commitment to creating a better life for her child. She wanted Wilson to have everything she didn't: a proper education, a safe home, and the chance to dream beyond their small community. However, the price for her ambition was steep. Her job as a seamstress often demanded long hours, leaving little time for her to spend with Wilson. Each morning, Amara would leave their small house before dawn, armed with her sewing kit and a packed lunch, and she wouldn't return until the stars lit up the sky. She knew her absence was a gap in Wilson's life, but she convinced herself that her sacrifices were worth it. To bridge the gap, Amara turned to their neighbor, Uncle Kizito. He lived alone in the next compound, a man who seemed to have all the time in the world. Kizito was a trusted member of the community, known for his jovial nature and willingness to lend a helping hand. Whenever Amara needed to leave Wilson behind, she would knock on Kizito's door, and he would readily agree to watch over the boy. At first, this arrangement worked well. Kizito appeared to be a positive influence, teaching Wilson practical skills like gardening and storytelling. Wilson quickly grew attached to his Uncle Kizito, often preferring to stay at his house even after Amara returned home. Amara, though slightly uneasy about how close Wilson had become to Kizito, pushed aside her concerns. After all, Kizito seemed to care for her son, and his presence allowed her to focus on her demanding work. But as months turned into years, Wilson's bond with Kizito deepened in ways Amara could not foresee. By the time Wilson was 15, he spent more time at Kizito's home than his own. He eagerly helped with chores, listened to Kizito's stories, and followed his advice without question. Kizito became a father figure to Wilson, filling a void the boy didn't know he had. Unbeknownst to Amara, this bond carried risks. While Kizito taught Wilson many admirable traits, he also exposed the boy to his own hidden struggles. Kizito was not the man he appeared to be. Beneath his charming exterior lay a battle with addiction, one he carefully concealed from the world. Amara remained oblivious to these shadows. Her life was consumed by her work, and she trusted Kizito completely. She never asked too many questions about what Wilson did while she was away. To her, Kizito's willingness to look after her son was a blessing, not something to scrutinize. For Wilson, Kizito's home became a second refuge. He felt understood and valued there in ways he didn't at home. Amara's constant absence created a void, one Kizito eagerly filled. The young boy absorbed everything Kizito said and did, imitating his mannerisms and adopting his worldview. He was too young to discern right from wrong, too inexperienced to recognize the hidden dangers of blind loyalty. Meanwhile, Amara's life grew busier. Her business was thriving, and she began to take on more clients, hoping to save enough money to send Wilson to a good school in the city. She often thought about how proud she was of her son. He seemed well-behaved and responsible, and she credited Kizito for much of that. She didn't realize that her distance from Wilson was creating a chasm she might one day struggle to bridge. Amara's neighbors occasionally raised concerns. They whispered about how much time Wilson spent at Kizito's house and questioned whether it was healthy for a teenage boy to be so attached to a man who lived alone. But Amara dismissed their comments. She believed she knew what was best for her son. As time passed, the cracks in the foundation of this arrangement began to show. Wilson started to pick up habits and behaviors that puzzled Amara. He sometimes used phrases she didn't recognize or made choices that seemed out of character. She assumed it was just teenage rebellion, a phase he would grow out of. She didn't think to connect these changes to his time with Kizito. What Amara couldn't see was that Wilson's growing attachment to Kizito was changing him in ways she couldn't control. While Kizito did care for Wilson, his personal struggles and flawed choices were beginning to spill over into the boy's life. Amara's trust in Kizito remained unwavering. She had no reason to doubt him, no evidence to suggest he might be a bad influence. Her life was too busy, her mind too preoccupied with the endless demands of survival. She didn't realize that the very person she relied on to care for her son might be the one leading him down a dangerous path. And so, the days went on, with Amara working tirelessly and Wilson spending more and more time at Quasito's side. The stage was set for a revelation that would shake their lives to the core, but for now, Amara remained in the dark, blissfully unaware of the storm gathering on the horizon. Wilson's relationship with Uncle Quasito was a source of comfort to him, a space where he felt understood and free. While his mother, Amara, was busy building a future for them, Quasito became a constant presence in his life. Wilson admired Quasito's confidence and the way he seemed to navigate life effortlessly. He enjoyed the stories Quasito told, often filled with lessons about resilience and creativity. But Quasito was a man with secrets, and his charm hid a darkness that Wilson was too young to detect. For years, Quasito battled a private addiction. He had kept this hidden from everyone in the village, presenting himself as a reliable and friendly neighbor. His addiction was his escape from the loneliness and disappointments of life, a habit he had picked up in his youth but could never quite shake. It consumed him in quiet moments, behind closed doors, away from prying eyes. One fateful day, Wilson arrived at Quasito's house earlier than expected. His school had closed early, and he had decided to surprise his mentor by spending the afternoon with him. Quasito's door was slightly ajar, which Wilson found odd, but he assumed the man was somewhere inside. Wilson let himself in, as he often did, and called out for Quasito. There was no response. Curious, Wilson walked further into the house and noticed the bathroom door was slightly open. What he saw inside left him frozen in shock. Quasito was seated on the floor, deeply engrossed in his addiction. The sight was surreal, completely at odds with the composed and wise man Wilson thought he knew. For a moment, Wilson couldn't move. His heart raced, and his mind struggled to make sense of what he was seeing. The man he admired, the one he looked up to as a father figure, was caught in an act that seemed so strange and unsettling. Wilson's first instinct was to leave, to run out of the house and pretend he hadn't seen anything. But before he could act, Quasito noticed him standing there. Quasito's reaction was swift. He stood up, composed himself, and approached Wilson with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He tried to downplay the situation, acting as though nothing was wrong. But Wilson's wide eyes and trembling hands betrayed his confusion and fear. Sensing the boy's unease, Quasito took a different approach. He began to explain, or rather justify, his actions. He told Wilson that what he had seen was harmless, a way to cope with life's challenges. Quasito described it as something many people did, a habit that was misunderstood but not dangerous. He spoke with confidence and authority, using his bond with Wilson to manipulate the boy's perception.